Got what we need.
What do you got?
Success. Box of success.
A box of gold.
Pale ale.
Jackpot.
Pale ale, we found it.
And if you're lucky enough to find a bunch of pale ale in Mexico, you buy every last one off the shelf, even if you've got miles to go to get it home. In our last episode, Brenda took us for a romantic ride in the dinghy. This time around, we take in a couple of the local celebrations in a couple of the local towns and do our best not to get blown up.
Well, we're still here in Barra de Navidad. We've been here for about a month now, I think. Quite a long time. It's been fun. It's a nice place to be. But we've sort of been holding out for a couple little festivals that are going on. Well, one here in this town and one in the neighboring town of Malake. One of the cool things I think about Mexico is even in these tiny little towns, when there's an event or something going on, everybody comes out of the woodwork and it becomes sort of a hub of activity. Even in a tiny little town, it gets pretty crowded and exciting. Tonight is Carnival, which is a big deal, even in this tiny little town. So we're gonna go in, check it out, have a little fun, and be part of the madness. In a couple of days after that, there's St. Patrick's Day in the neighboring town. Again, a tiny little spot, but the place goes nuts for St. Patrick's Day. Who would have thought? So after these couple of holidays, it's going to be time for us to get out of here. We've been eyeing some weather that looks like early next week. Should have a south wind. So after St. Patrick's Day, we'll start moving north.
But before we leave Barra de Navidad behind, it's time for Carnival, which turns this normally sleepy, quiet little town into a thing of madness. But of course, that doesn't start until the sun goes down. You might think this parade of highly inebriated motorbikes was an official part of the celebration. Well, you'd be wrong. They're just the welcoming committee. And they're just like the rest of us, just hanging around, waiting for the official parade to start. Except these guys, they're trying to jump out in front. That welcoming committee, they swing around and bring up the rear. Even in this otherwise quiet and sleepy little town, the festivities carry on into the wee hours of the morning. And because of that, it's important to keep up your strength. And the best way to do that is, of course, with a never-ending supply of churros. These things are a deep-fried dose of cinnamon and sugar, and most likely crack. They're highly addicting, and they'll give you the power to keep up with Carnival.
It's another day, another project. Today, it's our Anchor tricolored masthead light. It goes all the way at the top. We replaced this last year and it died already. We'll get into that in a minute because I'm not too happy about it. But also, it's this guy. It's a toothpick wind vane. Highly custom, highly aerodynamic. It's going up at the top. We now have a functioning anchor light. And toothpick wind vane works like a champ. This right here, this is the old anchor light. I was a little perturbed because it wasn't working and I just replaced it last year. But turns out it wasn't even the anchor light. The wire that feeds the anchor light, that's bad somewhere in the mast. I don't know where. It's got power at the bottom, but not at the top. But to make that work, we had a spare wire in the mast that fed a strobe light that we never used. So I used that wire for the new anchor light. Now it's done, now it works. But unfortunately, I didn't figure out that this thing was still good until I drilled and tapped new holes and put the new one on. Now we got a bunch more holes, but it works. And this is now a spare. But it's done. So we're gonna go have some fun. Today's St. Patrick's Day. Gonna go get cleaned up, and then we're heading to the town next door of Malake. Should be great. Taxi aquatico, adventurer. Nos gustaría un taxi en la laguna, por favor.
Hey, momento.
Gracias. All right, St. Patrick's Day. You might notice we're wearing pants, shoes, and long shirts because they blow stuff up around here. You gotta have protection. Got eyeglasses, partly because I'm old and blind, but I don't want to lose my eyes.
And with all that protection, we rounded up the troops, grabbed a water taxi, and headed for Bar de Navidad, where we hopped on a rickety old bus bound for the neighboring town of Malake. On the way, we tried to figure out who broke up with who. And after about 15 minutes of a kidney-jarring ride, we pulled into Malake. And with seemingly perfect timing, we pulled in just in time to watch them put the finishing touches on this death trap. In just a matter of hours, this thing would be going up in flames and most likely take a few people with it. And it might seem strange for such a small town to have such a big St. Patrick's Day celebration. But it all comes down to history. Way back in the 1840s, during the Mexican-American War, a group of Irish Catholic soldiers fought alongside the Mexican army. As a thanks, the Mexican government deeded these soldiers, nicknamed the St. Patrick's Battalion, a bunch of land, which would eventually become this town. And so, this little town puts on quite a show as a way to remember and say thanks. But just like everything in Mexico, it really doesn't get going until well after the sun goes down. So to keep up our strength, we had to find some of the best tacos in town. Even after a big old plate of tacos, we still had a handful of hours before the big show. So, of course, we went and tried to find something else that would kill us. And since these sketchy carnival rides seemed like a pretty sure thing, and we're not quite ready to end it all yet, a big old cake to share with the team, that seemed like a whole lot better option. And finally, well past the point when I should be sound asleep, it was time for the big show. But they just gotta figure out which one of these fuses to light first. This fine piece of Mexican engineering puts on a show unlike any fireworks show I've seen anywhere on Earth. And not if, but when you get hit by some shrapnel, just remember, it's a badge of honor.
Con una pasión tan fuerte. Ay, 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 ay. Ahora sigo cantando y sigo gozando. Yo sigo cantando y sigo gozando.
Well, we survived. Just barely. Got all my fingers, all my toes, all my eyeballs. Success. Not even any third-degree burns. Can't beat it. But I guess that means it's time for us to get out of here. We've been in Barra for over a month. Time to go. Time to start moving north. A couple of days, there's a south wind. We're going to take it. Adios, Barra de Navidad. It's fun while it lasted. But till then, thanks for watching. See you next time.